What's up people, how's it going? This is Bharat and welcome back to yet another video. This video is very special for me because I had to do a lot of research and it's also one of the most requested topic for in this channel. So the video is going to be about the Python developer roadmap. So I'm going to be taking over 4 important categories. These 4 categories were decided by the recent poll that I conducted in my channel, and I'm going to be considering these 4 important categories and also having few subcategories towards the end. So this video is going to be again about Python developers. So you have a lot of different sections and I'm going to be discussing about each section and how long it takes and what you learn and how you should learn it, and that's what this entire video is going to be about. So without any further ado, let's get this video started. I have a presentation to share as well, and right we go. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to be calling this as a Python developer roadmap from beginners to the core advanced or core developer. So if you see that there are a lot of things that you need to know when you want to develop or become a Python developer. So I'm going to be considering primarily few categories as part of this video. Let's start the slide again. Alright, so first things first, we have the beginner to core developer, right? And what is it going to be starting with? Where do you even begin? We need to understand that Python is a very vast language. It is not just about, it's not going to solve just one particular use case. Rather, it has grown to a scale where it is used almost in every different industry. And the roadmap for individual segments or individual interest is going to be completely different. You cannot do the same stuff. You needn't do the same stuff to reach your end goal. And what are the different categories I'm going to be discussing in this video? I'm going to be discussing 4 important categories. The first being the core Python developer. Core Python developer is the developer who is able to make changes to the Python programming language itself, the Python repository itself. Those are people are going to be the core Python developers, followed by Python for web developers and Python for data science, again very highly requested topic, followed by the Python for GUI application development, and towards the end I'm going to be talking about other roles that are possible if you have Python knowledge. All right, so let's get this started with the Python core developer roadmap. You have a lot of things that you do as part of a Python development, but what exactly does a core Python developer do, right? If you understand core Python developers, they are probably the you can think of them as the masters of Python development, because they are people who are having the ability to make changes to the Python programming repository itself. Like you have your language releases, Python is recently in Python 3.9 got released, and the next subsequent versions are going to be released as well. But if you want to make changes to these releases itself, you have to be a core Python developer. What are the requirements? Basically, there are a few requirements that you need to adhere to. The first being the in-depth understanding of Python, and second being it definitely requires some experience. Not just some, it requires good amount of experience, and it is also being stated in their document as well. Followed by you need to be peer reviewed and you need to adhere to the standards of PEP 13. Now Python is a very interesting kind of a language. It has also got an interesting community where everything is in the form of documents, and you need to follow these documents, and these are standards that the community sets, primarily set by the core developers, but again community also has a say in it. And the PEP 13 is a document where they have listed down all the important requirements to become a core developer. So followed by you will be definitely regarded very high in the standard, because you can see that core Python developers are always in demand. And what does this core Python developer even mean? Is it like a job title, or what does it even mean, right? The important thing that you need to understand that core Python developers are basically people who are considered to be extremely experienced in Python. So if you become a core developer, you will probably be working as a senior engineer or a principal engineer in some top company. So these people are core Python developers, and it requires definitely a huge amount of experience. So how do you even get started with that is what you're going to be seeing in the next slide. So I'm going to be considering from a noob to a core Python developer, meaning that I'm going to consider that you're a complete newbie. You don't have any kind of experience. You're starting out Python for the first time, or you're starting out any programming language for the first time. And if your goal is to become a core Python developer, you need to attain that level of experience. You will be starting with Python, obviously, and not just some simple things with Python. You will be dedicating your entire effort into learning everything possible with Python. Now there is one big misconception that people have to know everything about Python to become a core Python developer. It is absolutely not true. You need to understand the basics right. First of all, what does Python give? How is it different from other languages? And you need to get through the basics as early as possible. So that's why I've written Python. Understand your Python basics. Learn all the concepts pertaining to the current Python release. If you have 3.9 release currently going on, you need to know what exactly is the release about, what is the things that are out there, and you need to obviously have an hands-on experience and learning that. So how do you get started? You get started with Python basics. There are a lot of tutorials available. You spend about 3 to 6 months with that. And once you are able to understand the different things that Python basic gives you, you are going to be learning release wise. So what is this release going to do, and what are the different things that are introduced as part of this release, and how can I get better at that? So you're going to learn everything from scratch and start with the basics and go till the advanced concepts of Python programming language. So let's say that you completed working on it. You've had 1 year or 1.5 years of hands-on experience. You're building applications, you're contributing. And the next step that you're going to do is obviously go and start contributing to the open source. Now, open source is very, very important, because let's say that there is a Python library out there. It's a third-party library. You want to contribute to this library, and you need to do a lot of open source contribution, and it has to go for about 3 years. So let's say that you've contributed for 1+ year, and you've already had 2 years of experience with Python. You've completed 3+ years of Python contribution learning, and you are actually part of this community now. The next step that you're going to do is as given in the PEP 13 document. Once you're in a stage where you're contributing to third-party open source libraries, then is the stage where you're going to start creating issues or finding out issues with the Python's current release. Let's say there's a Python 4.1 release going on, and you want to find out what are the issues that are out there with 4.1. If there is anything that is breaking, you want to find that, and you're going to create these issues. And followed by that, you're also going to triage issues, meaning that you want to understand what are the people raising issues for. There is somebody else raising an issue, you need to understand what the issue is, and you should also triage it to the correct person, or you need to give some kind of a fix for that. And this is called as triaging. You need to be able to understand what is happening, what should be the cause for the issue, and you should also be able to give some kind of understanding to the developer who's going to fix it. So this is called as triaging process. It's also a very important activity that you need to do as part of becoming a code developer. Now you have done this. You've already had 4 years of community. You've contributed to the community, continuously contributing to the community. What is the next step? The next step is that you will be reaching out to the Python code developers themselves. There is actually a GitHub link I'm going to be posting in the description, where you will see that there are almost 100+ code developers at the moment. Few are active, few are not active, but you got to reach out to these developers and ask for some kind of mentorship. And this mentorship is actually a very, very important step, because once you get this mentorship, you will be able to understand what are the changes that you need to make, what is the learning curve, what is that is different, and you'll also be able to understand the thoughts behind all of these code developers, so that you also will become one in the future. Now 5+ years of experience, that's when you are considered as a very good, you are contributing to the community. You've already done your work, you've already done your due diligence, and you achieve your goal. Now, does this route give me that 5 years? If I do this for 5 years, will I become a code developer? It is not going to be guaranteed, because in the PEP 13 document, it's very, very clear that you need to be very patient. You need to be humble about your changes. You need to also provide as much information to the community as possible. Only then you are considered as a core developer, core Python developer. But if you see that, a lot of people, a lot of principal engineers and senior engineers in a company are in some form or the other would have already become a core Python developer if they are working on the Python programming language. So it's kind of a very deep curve, but also it's kind of a slow process, because it's going to be taking a large amount of information that you're going to give to the community first, and only then Python is going to reward you with a core developer status. All right, so let's get started. Let's get moving on with what's not required as part of becoming a core developer. The first thing that is not required is a lot of people have this question: does a core developer need to know everything about Python? The short answer is no. You don't have to know everything about Python, but you need to understand that what are the 1P libraries, or what are the 1P libraries that are available as part of Python, what is not available with Python, and you should also have a very strong understanding of what could be wrong. Even if you don't know what is exactly wrong, you should be able to get the flow, get the understanding of what could be wrong where, and then you understand and try to do and work around that. And the next question that a lot of people again have is that core developers needs to have a hands-on in every framework available, meaning let's say there is a framework called Django out there. There is a framework called Flask out there. Should I have as a core developer in every programming framework or every Python framework available? Again, no, you don't have to know every framework that is available. But let's say there is one framework that is actually opening up a flaw with Python. It's actually exposing this flaw. So what you need to know, obviously there will be some kind of an issue which is being raised, and you need to understand again where could that issue be where could the issue have started from, and go there and able to be fixed that. So that's going to be a very steep curve. It's not going to come with just 20 days of learning, 30 days of learning. It's obviously going to take large amount of time to understand that. And that's what I said in the start itself, that you need to have patience. If you want to become a core developer, you need to have patience, contribute to the community, and then you'll be awarded with that core Python developer status. So that's it for this one. Again, let's move on to the next section. Next section is for Python for web developers. So Python for web developers is one of the, again, most frequently asked question to me ever since I made the API video again. And again, Python for Django, Python for with Flask, all of these videos are frequently requested to me. So what exactly does a web developer with Python knowledge need to know, and what is the roadmap for becoming a web developer in Python? So if you understand, Python web developers are a little bit different from the other web development experts, primarily because Python web developers not only need to know the UI or the front end portion, they also need to know the back end portion of it, because you got to be a little bit stronger in what you're doing. And I believe that every Python web developer has to have that full stack experience, has to have that hands-on full stack experience. So that's going to be the roadmap we're going to discuss. And we'll first start with what are the requirements to become a Python web developer, right? The Python web developers need to understand at least the minimum of web pages. You need to know how a browser is rendering a web page, how the web page is requesting for data in the backend, how the web page is connected to a server, and things like that. You should definitely be able to understand. The second thing that you need to also have is the hands-on experience on building scalable and reliable web projects. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but again, remember that you need to always have a scalable and reliable web project in your mind when you want to become a web developer with Python. So the next thing is also, again, like I said, you need to have that full stack experience. You need to have the full stack understanding of building both the backend as well as the front end. You need to also have understanding of multiple technologies, meaning that you not only learn Python, you'll be learning things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and a few other Python or the few other front-end libraries if you need, front-end frameworks if you need. So that's going to be also a very important skill set that you need to possess. Python for web developers, again, are high demand, basically because of the nature of the work that you're going to do. If you're going to be a full stack developer, right, it's going to be highly in demand skill for years to come. So that's going to be the requirements. And let's move on to the roadmap itself, because this is going to be a little bit of tricky roadmap compared to how you judge a code developer. Now, Python for web developer, you need to start primarily with a couple of important front end technologies, which is HTML and CSS, probably one of the oldest technologies still alive. And HTML and CSS, you need to understand how to build a static website. You need to start with that. You need to go for it at least for 3 months of time, understand how to build a static website, use HTML, use CSS, use your own imagination, build static websites. Followed by that, you need to understand another important programming language itself, which is the JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is available, is actually prevalent in almost every web developing framework out there. Like if you see something running on the UI right now on your web browser, chances are that there's going to be some form of JavaScript which is going to be used there. So you need to know JavaScript for sure. And followed by that, you also can or learn jQuery if required, framework which is based on JavaScript. So let's say that you're understanding JavaScript, and you also can learn jQuery along with that. Now, not only that, you will also be learning about DOM elements, what are DOM elements, and how you access these DOM elements. So this entire package is again going to take you 6 months. So you initially had 3 months of HTML, CSS understanding. Put another 3+ months or 4+ months to understand your JavaScript, and combined together, you will have 6+ months of JavaScript and HTML and CSS front-end building experience. And this period should be fully hands-on, not just theoretical. Always have hands-on experience, always practice hands-on. All right, you've done that. Let's move on to the next thing that you need to know. The next thing that you need to know is building your web projects. And after you have done that for 6+ months, you will learn your Python. Now, Python for web development, you needn't know the entire thing about Python, meaning that you needn't understand the code development level of understanding. Because what is going to happen with Python is that you're obviously going to pick up develop some kind of a Python based framework, which is going to have its own kind of a syntax. It's also going to have own kind of element building and things like that. So my request or my recommendation will be to learn the Python basics very, very strongly. You would already have very good understanding of how the elements are going to be used because you already used that with JavaScript. And coming to Python, you will be understanding how to create an element, how to create a data structure, how to manage that, and go on with OOP structures and OOP concepts and building classes and functions. And this is not going to take more than 1 to 3 months of time, in my opinion. So once you've done that stage of understanding, it's time to move on and pick your favorite framework. And my recommendations will be either Django or Flask. But like I said, there is a lot of Python frameworks. But if you pick either of these two, there's a huge community support to give you in case you are stuck somewhere, you want to know an answer for something. You can again go into Google, hit your question up, there is some answer out there. So if you pick up something like that, like let's say you're picking up Django as a framework to learn, you will be spending at least about 6 months or 6 months of your time and understanding that framework and building projects. And you again and again you practice and you build your portfolio. Now once you build your portfolio, this shouldn't take more than 1 year, 1.5 years that maximum. And here you are ready to be going out in the world and facing your web development challenges. So this entire experience, like this entire thing, shouldn't take you more than 1.5 years, like I said. But along the way, you'll also understand few things like how do you call an API, how do you call an SPI, and you'll also learn about Git. You'll also learn about Docker and things like that, right? And once you've done all of this, put it all into some form of project or portfolio, and you're good to go. Alright, what's the frequently asked question with Python for web developers? Frequently asked question, the first question is, do you need to know core Python libraries? Obviously that you need to know core Python libraries, but it's not mandatory, because as you learn the Python for Python with Django or Django or Flask, you'll be learning about few modules like request or URL lib3, which are very, very important libraries when you're considering server to front-end communication, server to server communication. When these are very, very important libraries with respect to Python. But you don't have to know the entire Python library itself, all the Python libraries that are out there. You don't have to know about any of that. Next question is, if you don't know HTML or CSS, right, can I manage? You can obviously learn both of these technologies on the fly, meaning you can start with Django and Flask and just learn what HTML and CSS does. But my suggestion would be to not do that. Just start with HTML and CSS, because these are very, very easy to learn kind of a technology. You can just learn these things very, very easily. You can understand how things are working. And once you have a very fair amount of understanding with HTML and CSS, you needn't go ahead and learn the entire everything about HTML and CSS. Because you obviously have, your end goal is to become a Python web developer. You have to become a web developer, but with Python, you also need to know another language, right? So my suggestion will be to learn the HTML CSS first. But if you are somebody like me, which is on the lazy side, if you are going to be learning on the fly, but make sure to learn it properly. If you're not interested in the front end, what should I do, right? And that's a very frequently asked question. My answer will be that okay, you can manage without a front end knowledge, but how do you give a product to a client who's asking for some important project without actually having some kind of UI element? If it's going to be a very dull project, nobody's going to like it. So if you want to become a full stack developer, or if you want to be very highly valuable in the market, it's very, very important you get a good grip of both front end as well as back end. So those are the frequently asked questions, and let's move on to the next section, which is a very, very detailed section for Python for data science. So Python for data science is again a very, very frequently asked question. You guys have been asking me for roadmap and again. So here is the roadmap. I'm going to be giving you guys as much information as possible, but constrained to the time, and also because of I'm talking about few other sections as well, I'm going to be keeping it a little bit on the briefer side as well. So what exactly do you need to know, or what exactly does a Python for data science do? Now, data science is a very, very huge field, but if you want to become a data scientist or a data science engineer, you are requested to you're mandatorily you need to know how to get a data, how to clean a data, until you have to go till building a model with the data. So where do you start, and what are the requirements for becoming a Python for data, or you want to become a data science engineer? So a data science or scientist or data science engineer is capable of understanding how to process the data, like I said, till you're building a machine learning model yourself and even visualizing it to the end. And data science is a broad field. You cannot put your hands somewhere and say that I want to become that, because the paths might be a little bit different, but the usual flow, the basic structure or the skeleton of this flow is going to be, it's going to remain the same. Data science, you cannot, it can be broken down into your interest area probably after another year of your learning experience, but you cannot in the initial stages itself start thinking, okay, I want to become something with respect to machine learning expert, I want to become an AI expert, and you cannot, there is no kind of a way to reach one particular path alone. If you want to know about that, you need to know a few other things along the way as well. That's what we're going to be discussing. One more important misconception is that data science is always about, becoming data science scientist or data science engineer, building models and things like that. It's not the case. There are few other roles that are associated with the data science, especially the analytical, the operational, and also the technician roles, where you need to have a little bit of understanding of Python and also good understanding of how to read analytics. Once you understand how to read analytics, you can be called as a data science analyst, or you can be data science technician. These are also roles that are available with data science, not necessarily the scientist or an engineer. So following on, we have the medium to difficult, hard difficulty. Primarily I've written that as medium to hard difficulty because it's going to be because it's got a very good steep kind of a learning curve. It's not going to be easy to pick up immediately like you can do for web development. So that's going to be the reason. Let's move on to the roadmap itself. I'm going to be starting again, considering that you're a complete newbie, you don't know anything. You're going to start with the prerequisite of learning few basic things. You got to start with understanding data structures. You can understand SQL scripting. You need to understand shell scripting. So why are we doing these three activities? The primary reason being that once you understand how these three different things are going to work, you'll be able to understand how you're going to visualize data, how you're going to clean your data, how you're going to wrangle your data, and finally build your model. So these are going to be very, very important concepts. So all do that for at least a 3 months of time. Learn all of these with respect to Python, and once you have completed learning this, it's time to move ahead and start understanding what your interest is. So by the time you've completed learning these concepts with Python, and you also understood how to use Python to use data structures with Python, you can do shell scripting with Python, and once you're done with that, it's time to choose your interest. If you're very, very sure that you want to become a data science engineer, carry on with this slide. If you're not, if you want to become something like you want to become an analyst or you want to become a technician, I would highly recommend to switch to the next slide. And in the next slide, you're going to see what is the path for becoming some kind of a technician or a data scientist. What is the path for becoming a technician or probably an analyst? All right, so let's go to the next slide because it's going to be important one. I'm going to be talking primarily about the data science engineer in the first 3 points. The first 3 points, the first one is that it's a very, very important prerequisite. Once you've understood Python with basics of Python, you are going to move forward and learn, or if you need to have strong understanding of statistics. Now, mathematics is a very, very important requirement for data science roles because primarily this entire modeling or the entire data science is based on the concept of statistics. Statistics, probability, integration, and calculus is what is the entire thing is going to be based upon. You need to have stronger understanding of basics of all of this, not the complete. You needn't become a mathematician. You didn't have that kind of understanding. Just be strong in all of these basics of mathematics. It's not, you can argue that if without mathematics, I know I can become a data scientist. Yes, you can argue that. But if you want to become a very good data scientist, or if you want to become a very good data science engineer, right, you want to build your own models, you need to create your own algorithms. The job market is such a way that you need to be able to write your own algorithm. You need to write your own algorithm. You need to have a very strong understanding of mathematics, especially the statistics portion. So once you've done that, let's say you're spending 3 months to learn and strengthen your mathematics skills, you're going to move forward and learn 2 important segments of data science. The first one is data cleaning. So data cleaning, it takes care of understanding how you retrieve data, how you clean the data of noise, and the data wrangling part, again, it is taking care of processing it and pushing it out as the data that needs to be consumed by the model. So this process is going to take at least 3 to 4.5 months of your time. You need to understand how to do this with Python. There are few libraries out there like NumPy, SciPy, which is going to do that for you, and data wrangling can also be done with these 2 libraries. So start with that and you will be very, very, you would have completed 50% of the entire work. Third is going to be the most important thing. You want to understand how to build models, or how do you build your own algorithm in simpler terms. You'll also be understanding about different algorithms like these classification and regression models and how do you build all of that. And these are very, very important things. Now, if you are going to be somebody like if you want to become a very good data scientist, highly recommend you guys to practice these things. I see a lot of people not just practicing, everything's theoretical knowledge for them. They're able to explain what the algorithm does and everything of that sort. But if you want them to write some code, build some model, they are not able to do that because they don't have a hands-on experience. This is where you need to separate yourself from that kind of streams and learn to write algorithms. Basically, you need to learn to build algorithms. And how do you do that? With Python, you have TensorFlow, you have scikit-learn, you have PyTorch. These are three important Python frameworks that are out there. You pick either one of them, and it doesn't matter which one, and you just start writing your algorithms. You start practicing your algorithms. There's a ton and ton of free content out there with respect to either of these three frameworks. Very good community support as well. You just start writing and understanding and visualizing your framework, visualizing your algorithms basically through this. And there's one more important thing that a lot of people have as a misconception, which is that what should I pick? What framework should I pick? Does framework really mean, or does framework really have an impact on my learning experience? The short answer is no. Let's say that you're very, very new to programming itself. How do you know what is going to be difficult if you're going to learn for the first time? If all of these three things are going to be the first time experience, right? How do you know something is going to be difficult, something is going to be easy? Do not worry about what's going to be easy, what's going to be difficult. Pick either one of these three frameworks, start learning and writing your models. So once you've done all of these three things, you'll also be learning a little bit of visualization as well, especially with matplotlib and things like that. These are again Python libraries that you'll use to visualize your data. The entire thing shouldn't take you more than 1.5 years, and 1.5 years is not a very huge amount of time considering that you would have learned a ton of things along the way. The final point here is that you also have to understand about visualization. You also need to understand about visualization because primarily you use it for becoming an analyst as well. In the previous slide, I talked about becoming an analyst. You need to follow one important rule, which is to actually use things like these visual algorithms and be able to understand or perceive data and be able to give some points on that. So that's going to be the role of an analyst, and that important fourth point should be taking care of that for you. Now, all of these is a very, very good things, right? You have understood how to build models and things like that. The fifth point is a little bit of a sub point where you need to know how to deploy these models on the cloud. Now, deploying models, most of them people makes this mistake of deploying it or not knowing what cloud does and how you call a cloud, how do you make a request to a cloud to deploy these models, and how do you make a request to get a response from this model, things like that. So you need to understand about all of these technologies that are out there, especially with AWS and Google, and you need to understand how to deploy your code or deploy your model on the cloud and using that to write your program. So basically these are the steps that are required. It shouldn't take you more than 1.5 years in my opinion. I've given the lower end to upper end considering a very good wriggle room as well. So use that, and you can obviously be you'll obviously have a difference in how you're learning if you follow this roadmap. All right, moving on to the most asked question. This question is going to be like a very, very frequently asked question. So the question is, I'm not good at maths. Can I learn data science? Just tell me if I can learn data science without being good at maths. Even though I want to say yes, you can learn data science, the hard truth is that unless you want to become an analyst or things like that, or if you want, unless you want to become a technician, if you want to have a good understanding of becoming an engineer itself, you need to have a good understanding of mathematics, because anything that your program does, anything that your program is doing, or any computer science related algorithm is going to have some form of mathematics involved. And with respect to data science, it's already completely going to be data everywhere. So you need to have good understanding of the mathematics, especially the statistics and integral calculus and things like that, to have a good grip of your ML algorithms, your AI algorithms. And even though that's not the always important prerequisite, you will find it very, very difficult if you're not good at all of these important basics of mathematics. The next question is it a time-taking field? Is it going to be a very steep curve for me? The short answer is no, it's not a very steep curve. I've seen people complete it within 1 year. They've done an entire data science walkthrough. They've completely understood what is happening. They're able to build models and things like that. But if you are somebody, if you're a very slow learner, or if you're a slow learner like me, it's going to take 1.5 years of grind for sure. At least spending 1 to 2 hours every day. You're going to spend at least 8 months to 9 months to have a good grip of data science, and followed by that required of 6 months of practicing and writing and building your portfolio to be able to call yourself as a data science engineer, or you have some experience with data science. That's the grind is definitely going to be there, but it's not an impossible feat as well. So that's it for the most asked question. I'm going to be moving to the fourth section, which is to becoming using Python for GUI applications. Now, GUI applications are have seen a boom in the last 5 years, in my opinion, especially with Python, because even if you go back 10 years ago and Python was, even being used in a lot of different fields, it was not very frequently used in terms of building GUI applications. The primary reason being Python was always thought to be a very slow kind of a language, because GUI, you want to build faster, you want to write faster application, you want to refresh your widgets faster and things like that. Python was not able to do that, was the misconception that was out there. But Python for GUI applications have seen a very strong increase in the last 5 years, especially with libraries like frameworks like Kiwi and PyQt5. So if you want to become a GUI application developer with Python, you should have hands-on experience and also be able to work with Python and build both desktop as well as your mobile applications. So let's see the requirements that are out there. That's very, very important to become a Python GUI application developer. The first is obviously good understanding of UI widgets and lifecycle of application. Followed by you are required to have good understanding of what does the UX do, how do you build your UI, and things like that is also very important. And like I said, there's a rising demand for full stack developers. So if you want to become a GUI developer, right, I would highly recommend to also know about the backend portion of things as well. So once you have the full package of knowing both the application development as well as the backend portion, your market is going to be completely different. So the learning curve is comparatively easier, if you ask me, considering primarily because of the ease with which we can understand all these concepts. There isn't much complexity out there, and you can definitely learn it less than 1 year if you are even if you are a slow learner. All right, so time to look at the roadmap itself. It's going to be from the newbie to the application developer stage. The first thing that you need to know is understand the OS level architecture. OS level architecture understanding is very, very important. And followed by that, you also need to understand how an application works. Now, application working life cycles is a very important concept, because without that, you will not be able to understand what a GUI application itself is doing. And you needn't spend so much amount of time, just about 1 week on that is enough. Next step, you're going to learn the basics of Python. When you say basics of Python, you needn't know the entirety of Python, just the basics with respect to OOPS concepts, the data structures, and have a good understanding of how to integrate with external libraries and internal libraries and things like that. That's going to be about 3 months of your time, and followed by that, you have to know, or you need to have some understanding of UI and UX. What does a UI mean? What does a UX mean? How can you bring that to your GUI application? Because it's a very important skill that GUI applications are often going to be tested on how frequently they're used, how often is it interactive with the user. That's why it's called as GUI. So it's going to be in understanding. It's imperative that you understand the UI and UX portion of things. And let's say you spend about 1 to 2 months on that. Now, next step is very important. Let's start with your framework. You need to choose either of the PyQt or KiwiMD. Are there any other frameworks that are out there? Yes, definitely they're out there. PyQt and KiwiMD are probably the most frequently used GUI application frameworks, or you can call them toolkits. So use these toolkits, and once you're done using these toolkits, you will have good understanding of it. Follow some good Python course on that, for free tutorials on that, and you'll be able to understand how these things work. And you got to be spending about 6 months of time on that. So during the 6 months of time, you will be building your portfolio. You'll be trying to build some application and updating this portfolio. All right, followed by that, next time is to learn to build the backend. Also, in the starting, I said that you need to have the full stack experience, right? You need to have the good understanding of how to build the backend, how you can hit the APIs, how can you can get the data and do things like that. Recommendation will be from using Fast API or Flask, because these are fast prototyping API Python frameworks. You can use either of these two to have a little bit of understanding. I'm not saying that you need to be able to scale your product infinite times. anything of that sort. Good understanding of either of these frameworks will make you very, very stand out in the crowd. All right, so you've done all of these things and you will be able to understand where to deploy it. And either if you want to build for desktop, what is the difference? And if you build for mobile, what is the difference? And you need to be going through those challenges that are coming along your way to actually be, very good, have good understanding of Python, for GUI development with Python. So this is the roadmap. I'm going to move on to the frequently asked questions. And the first question is GUI application development difficult? It's definitely not, absolutely not. Primarily because there isn't much complexity associated with it, unless you are somebody like me who's struggling with the UI and UX portion of things. Colors and things like that shouldn't be much of a difficult thing. If you are somebody who's a creative person, you will be picking up these things very, very easily. If you want to know, like, should I know other frameworks as an application developer, my suggestion will always be to be on the fly to learn. If you are a GUI developer, the chances are that there's going to be some other framework in the future that is going to replace your framework. There's going to be something else in the future, some software in the future that's going to replace your GUI framework. So I would highly recommend you guys to always be on the fly and learning things, be it either Flutter, you want to learn React Native, do learn all of that. And once you've done that, also have good understanding of native development as well, native meaning Kotlin or Swift. And these things will give you a very rounded understanding and very rounded knowledge that you can definitely use as a very important skill. All right, so we are moving to the final section where I'm going to be talking about two important fields other than what I've discussed till now. They can also be considered as a field for Python. So Python is primarily used in automation engineering roles, meaning that if you want to automate something, primarily the testing portion of things, you want to build something on an automated way that can go and run your test cases and test all of these things. Primarily used on web pages and web services, sometimes also used on mobile devices like Android or iOS testing. So app testing teams usually use either Selenium or APM as a testing framework to use and write your automated test. Now Python has good integration with Selenium as well as APM, and you can use either of these two things, and learning this shouldn't take you more than 3 months of your time. 3 to 6 months of your time is everything that it's going to take. Let's say you're spending 3 months of your time on Python basics, followed by 3 to 6 months of your time on Selenium, APM and UI Automator, you're good to go as an automation tester. The final one is system maintenance. A lot of companies require system maintenance experts who have to manage thousands and thousands of computer machines or data centers as well. And for those, Python scripting is going to be very, very useful. The first thing I would highly recommend you guys to start with is to have good understanding of OS commands as well as database commands and database scripting, not more than 1 month of your time, followed by good understanding of how do you manage large scale systems and what are the large scale systems do, how is it networked and how is it connected to the network. And followed by that, you will have, if you want to start writing Python scripts, understand how the Python scripts can be deployed onto these systems, and you are going to be a system maintenance expert. And these are common fields that are also using Python, and I just wanted to share it with you people. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I hope I did give a detailed roadmap for every field that you guys asked for. If I did miss any of the fields, just drop me a comment in the section below. I'll be able to pick that up and maybe make a part 2 of video sorts if you guys are interested. So if you like this video, you know what to do, smash the like button, and most importantly, share it among your friends or people who are looking to know about these things. And one more important thing is that I'm going to be sharing or putting this PDF or the PPT file that I just used in the description. Again, use that if you want to, and let me know how this video was in the comment section below. I'll meet you in the next video with something really, really useful and important. Until then, it's Bharat. Peace out. Have a super awesome day.